Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. I think one of the most frustrating things that another person can say to you is when another person gives you advice when they are clearly not qualified to do so. Now obviously, there's a line to this. You don't need to have worked in movies to say that a movie stinks, and you would prefer that the director changed the music or changed a line of dialogue. You don't need to have been a chef to say that the food stinks, and you would have preferred that one of the ingredients been enhanced or minimized. Heck, I call out coaches all the time on my Dumb Decision series for doing stupid things, and I've never coached football before, let alone in the NFL. However, you have to know what you're qualified in. Otherwise, you're just going to come off as really stupid. I'll never give a rookie player advice on how to make it through the grind of training camp, because why would I even be the slightest bit qualified as someone who has never been through training camp as a player to tell a rookie how they can make it through? This is just a long-winded way of saying that in 2010, Carolina Panthers quarterback Jimmy Clausen gave some of the stupidest and most unwarranted advice I've ever heard at the NFL level. Again, giving unsolicited advice is a risky game to play, because while you're trying to be helpful, if you do it wrong, you can look arrogant, you can look like an idiot, and you can look like someone who thinks way too highly of themselves. And after a game against the Arizona Cardinals, Clausen did just that, and left a lot of people scratching their heads, both at the time of the event and more than a decade later. This is the story behind Jimmy Clausen and some of the worst advice in NFL history. Before I talk about the incident in question, we need some context to understand just who Jimmy Clausen is, and how the game went that prompted this advice in the first place. The year is 2010, and it was very clear that the Panthers needed to upgrade at the quarterback position after their starting quarterback from 2009, Jake Delhomme, was released from the team following an awful season where he threw just 8 touchdowns and 18 interceptions. And they found their opportunity when this guy right here, Jimmy Clausen, slid in the draft. Everyone knew that Sam Bradford was going to be the first quarterback off the board, but there was a lot of talk that Clausen would be the second guy taken, especially after a great junior season at Notre Dame where he completed 68% of his passes, which was the 4th highest total in the NCAA, and threw 28 touchdowns with just 4 interceptions, posting a college passer rating of 161.4, which was the 3rd highest total in the NCAA. Keep in mind that passer rating is calculated very differently in college. However, to the shock of a lot of people, Clausen, projected by some as a first-round pick, slid all the way down to the 2nd round, before the Panthers took him with pick number 48. A big reason why he slid, according to many draft experts, was because of his somewhat cocky and arrogant attitude, of which there were many examples cited. This will become apparent in just a few minutes when we hear what Clausen had to say at one point. As for how Clausen's career started off, well, let's just say that toward the end of the season, a lot of people were scratching their heads as to how Clausen was a 2nd-round pick. And I don't mean in the good sense. Like, how did Tom Brady slide all the way to the 6th round? I mean in the sense of, how was this guy ever drafted? And how was this guy even projected as a top 10 pick at one point? Because when I say watching Jimmy Clausen play was torture on the eyes, I truly mean it. Buried somewhere in the Geneva Convention is something about how being subject to and paying money to watch Jimmy Clausen play the quarterback position was a war crime. Over his first 10 appearances, he made 7 starts. The Panthers did not win a single game that he played in, and when you look at the numbers that Clausen put up, it's not hard to see why. Over the first 10 games of his career, Clausen completed a mere 51.3% of his passes. The guy that was the most accurate passer, or one of them, in college football, that guy was gone. If you plot this 51.3% completion percentage in the 2009 season, it would have ranked 32nd out of 33 quarterbacks, only ahead of Jamarcus Russell. When the only person worse than you at something is the biggest draft bust in NFL history, that's not a good sign. Over his first 10 games, Clausen threw 1 touchdown pass. On 224 pass attempts, he found the end zone once. Obviously, that's bad. But just to give you an idea of how bad that is, that same season, Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback David Garrard got hurt in a Monday Night Football game against the Tennessee Titans. After getting hurt, to replace him, they signed Todd Bowman, a 38-year-old who was literally working on a farm and riding a tractor when he got the call to come to Jacksonville. Bowman started the next week and threw more touchdown passes in that game than Clausen did over his first 10 games of the season. That's how historically bad Clausen was. And his passer rating of 55 was the worst in the NFL. With 3 games to go, the Panthers were having one of their worst seasons in franchise history. And Clausen was so bad that there was talk that if they got the #1 pick, that they would use it to do the almost unprecedented thing and draft a quarterback. You never saw teams draft a quarterback 1 year after drafting one high, but Clausen was so bad that this was a legitimate option for the Panthers. With that, we head to Bank of America Stadium. It's week 15 of the NFL season, and we have a game on our hands between the Carolina Panthers and the Arizona Cardinals. This was by far the biggest game of the week on the schedule, as nothing else of note happened that day that would live on in NFL history. In all seriousness, this game looked awful on paper, as the Panthers and Cardinals are the 2 worst point differentials in football, and any quarterback battle involving Jimmy Clausen and John Skelton is a quarterback battle that the average football fan really does not want to watch. However, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but this game was actually a pretty big game. You would think a game between a 1-12 team and a 4-9 team would be completely meaningless, but nope. For the Panthers, this game had huge implications on the pursuit of the #1 pick, as they had sole possession of the worst record in football. So a loss here would pretty much cement their spot atop the draft for the second time in franchise history, and the first time since 1995 when they were an expansion team. As for the Cardinals, this game had playoff implications. Seriously, that's how bad the NFC West was. As we would later find out in the day, the Seahawks and the Rams, both of whom were 6-7 and were atop the division, would lose and fall to 6-8. If the Cardinals won this game, then somehow they would be 1 game back of the division lead, and would still have a shot at the postseason, albeit not a great shot. Lose this game, and they're mathematically eliminated. But win this one, somehow at 4-9, they're still alive. But by the time the final whistle sounded in this one, something happened that we had never seen before on an NFL field. Because for the first time ever, Jimmy Clausen played well. It finally happened. It was a true Christmas miracle. Because for the first time, when the final whistle sounded, Jimmy Clausen was victorious. He successfully led his team to a win. A well-executed screen pass on the first drive got the Panthers into chip shot field goal range, giving them the early 3-0 lead. On the second drive, the Panthers once again got a field goal, thanks to 2 third-down conversions where Clausen successfully completed a pass, including this pass on 3rd and 6 to David Geddes, which might have been the best pass of Clausen's entire career. Seriously, you can't throw it any better than this. And throws like this are why some people still had hope for the guy, even after his disastrous rookie campaign thus far. 2 drives later, Clausen, for the first time since October 3rd, and for the first time in over 170 pass attempts, threw a touchdown pass, throwing a 16-yard pass to Jeff King. Granted, King was wide open to the point where Kendall Hinton would have been able to make this throw, and the pass was still behind him, but it's a touchdown for the first time in 2.5 months, so it has to count for something. And by the time the game ended, thanks to 2 additional field goals in the second half, the Panthers came out on top and won 19-12. Now, did Clausen do a lot this game? Absolutely not. In the fourth quarter, the Panthers made a deliberate effort to keep the ball on the ground and try and have Clausen do as little as possible. On Carolina's final 18 plays of the game, they did not throw a pass, and tried to exploit a run defense that finished the season 30th out of 32 teams in rushing yards allowed, and 29th in rushing touchdowns allowed. And Clausen's numbers were by no means spectacular. Outside of that pass to Geddes, everything was kept short, as he only finished the game with 141 yards passing. However, he did what he had to do, and had a career day in the process. He went 13 for 19, completing 68.4% of his passes. That was his highest completion percentage in a game, and by a lot, as that was the first time that he ever completed more than 59% of his passes. He posted a passer rating of 107.6, which was the highest passer rating in a game in his career, and was just the second time that he posted a passer rating above 64. And he didn't throw an interception or turn the ball over. Considering the fact that he threw a pick in each of his last 3 games, that's quite the improvement. Credit has to be given where credit is due. Clausen took advantage of his opportunity on this day, and didn't make the big mistake like he made in practically every other game thus far this season. And after the game, Clausen met with John Skelton, the opposing rookie starting quarterback. This is incredibly common. You'll always see the 2 quarterbacks meet up at midfield after the game during the post-game handshakes. And during this meeting at midfield, Clausen had some words for Skelton. Now, what do you think those words would be? Do you think they'd be something along the lines of, looking forward to many more battles between us in the future? Or, you made some amazing throws out there today? Or, this is only the beginning? Or anything like that. You know, just incredibly general things in the name of good sportsmanship. But nope. Because do you want to know what Jimmy Clausen said to John Skelton after this game? Which, keep in mind, was the first win and maybe the first decent game of his career? He actually had the audacity to give Skelton advice on how he could become like him. Clausen said after the game, "It's definitely slowed down these past few weeks. I'm seeing things more clearly and quicker than I did earlier in the season." That's what I told him after the game. I said, "Everything will slow down for you. Just give it some time. Just keep working." I'm sorry, what? You're telling me that after literally the first good game of your career, that you're out there giving Skelton advice on what he needs to do to get to your level? First off, and this is the funny part about all of this, Skelton was literally better than you. Entering this game, Jimmy Clausen's passer rating was 55. John Skelton's passer rating was 55.7. Entering this game, Jimmy Clausen got sacked on 9.7% of his passing plays. John Skelton got sacked on 2.3% of his passing plays. Entering this game, Jimmy Clausen had yet to win a game. Skelton did. Why are you, of all people, telling Skelton, "I know this was a loss and you didn't play great, but I promise you, it gets better," when Skelton is literally better than you, and you're the same year of experience? It'd be one thing if this was a veteran quarterback saying this to a rookie, like Dan Marino to Peyton Manning in 1998. I could take that advice seriously. Heck, it'd be one thing if this was a rookie quarterback saying this to another rookie quarterback who was actually playing well. If in 2020, Justin Herbert said this to a rookie making his second start who didn't play well, that things would eventually slow down and you'll get a feel for it, I'd buy that. But Clausen is literally the last, least credible person I'd take this advice from. And I love what Clausen said about everything having slowed down in the past few weeks. Let's assume that by a few, he means his last 3 starts before this game. In those games, Clausen lost all of them, threw no touchdowns and 3 interceptions, got sacked 11 times, and averaged a mere 157 yards per game. If that's the definition of the game slowing down for you, oh boy, that's a red flag. That's like me playing a game of FIFA and saying I'm getting better, even though I'm losing games 10-0. I don't know whether this was Clausen trying to be genuinely helpful, or whether he was feeling incredibly cocky and on top of the world after winning his first game, where the Panthers ran the ball on their final 18 plays, mind you, that he felt the need to give this unsolicited advice to Skelton. But it just looks ridiculous. Why he was trying to show off his wisdom, which he had none of, and why he was telling Skelton that it will get better just like it did for him, when he was literally not getting better, is beyond me. But I'm sure the advice that Clausen gave to Skelton went in one ear and out the other. Turns out, Clausen was probably the one that could have used this advice, because after that game, he proceeded to stink again. The following week, the Panthers lost 27-3 to the Steelers, in a game where Clausen went 10 for 23, completing 43% of his passes for 72 yards while getting sacked 4 times, and throwing no touchdowns and 1 interception while posting a passer rating of 33.2, which is worse than if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. And after a 31-10 loss to the Falcons to close out the season, where Clausen once again did not play well, the Panthers drafted his replacement in Cam Newton with the first pick in the 2011 NFL Draft, and they never looked back. As for John Skelton, he was terrible, but he threw 15 touchdowns compared to just 7 for Clausen, had a passer rating of 63 compared to 61.9 for Clausen, and he won 8 games compared to Clausen's abysmal 1-13 record as a starter. So I will gladly take Skelton's career over Clausen's. So what's the moral of the story here? There are definitely times where giving advice is good, and there are times where giving unsolicited advice makes you look like an idiot, especially if you have no idea what you're talking about and aren't practicing what you preach. And this is one of those times. For Jimmy Clausen to tell John Skelton completely unprompted how it gets better, even though they were going through the same thing, even though Skelton was better than him in every way, and even though Clausen was going through one of the worst seasons by any rookie quarterback in NFL history, is laughable. I don't know how you can take that seriously. because for the former Notre Dame quarterback, when it came to his time in the NFL, he definitely did not have the luck of the Irish. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9. To see college football videos, subscribe to JaguarGator8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.